Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CISO Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our speaker, Upendra Mardikar, EVP, Chief Information Security Officer, TIAA. We're excited to have Upendra with us for his keynote presentation titled Cloud Cybersecurity Conundrums We Grapple With and How to Overcome Them. Welcome, Upendra. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's a fantastic to have all of you guys over here. It's a privilege to be talking to you. Like Nick said, Upendra Mardikar, I am a Chief Information Security Officer and CISO of TIAA, which is an asset management company. It's a Fortune 500, and we have $1.3 trillion asset under management. So that's TIAA, as many of you might know. I joined TIAA team as CISO September 2022. So I'm just coming to my 1-year anniversary. I run global cybersecurity as well as fraud management teams. I'm very privileged to support that. I've been, into the financial services industry for more than 25 years, and last Friday I filed my 100th patent. So I'm, very thrilled with that particular accomplishment as well. So that's about me. What we will talk about briefly over here is cloud security and what are the conundrums over there. Now this is a slightly different take. You will see about cloud security on OWASP. You will see lots of cloud vendors talking about cybersecurity. This particular take is a practitioner take and how we can address these conundrums in a slightly different way. So let's have that conversation. We will talk about top 3 over here. That is on the top of our mind as practitioner. Then we will talk about how to overcome these conundrums. And lastly, something that we are passionate about. We typically hear cyber is a team sport. What we are touting right now is cyber is a community sport. And what that means is, how can we, some practitioners, vendors, public sectors, private sectors, all coming together to solve this common problem that industry is facing called cybersecurity. So how can we come together as community so that we embrace this new mindset and then attack the cloud cybersecurity together? So let's jump. The 3 biggest cloud cybersecurity conundrums: the talent shortage, exposed cryptographic keys, and multi-cloud misconfigurations. And you may argue that these are not the top in your area, which is fine. These are a slightly different take, and I'll try to get to a point where all of us are on the same page on these conundrums, if not the biggest that you think, but at least, amongst top 10 is that we should all be focusing on as community. So let's look at cloud cybersecurity, guys. As most of the organizations are going to cloud, and then the cloud is either you are in a private cloud, you are in the public cloud, or you are in a hybrid cloud. What that means is some of the workloads are on-prem and some of the workloads are there in the cloud. And you may be at a different stage of the journey. You may say that, hey, only the client facing the rapid high velocity applications are in the cloud. Or you may say that, I'm just going to put all the databases and go full on with both feet into the cloud. But as you see all these numbers, are we prepared from the cyber perspective? So these numbers are taken directly from the internet and from the PwC. There are lots of surveys been done. But if you think about it, 36% expect that the cyber attacks on the cloud are going to increase, and which is very significant, guys. So what that means is lots of workloads. There is pressure on the organizations, on the tech organizations to move to cloud for the time to market, rapid iterations, all those wonderful benefits, elastic provisioning, scalability that we all get from cloud. We definitely want to do that. But there are few people who are talking that the 36% of them, actually, not just few, talking about that the cloud services, cyber attacks on the cloud services are going to go up. Now, are we equipped to handle this is the question. Now, we have seen various attacks, ransomware, supply chain, and all these kinds of attacks can get easily, applied directly onto the cloud as well. So what we will do, team, is that next 20, 25 minutes, we'll talk about some of the biggest cloud security, cybersecurity conundrums. I will talk with, there is a people angle to it. And then there are certain things on the technology side, and we can get into the process side of the equation as we talk about those two things on technology. So people is a typical cyber talent gap that industry is talking about. And that becomes a little bit more conspicuous when we are talking about cloud. As it is, we have a skills shortage of cybersecurity. And to top it, the cloud knowledge is also something where people are coming up to speed on that. So the foundational thing is cybersecurity expertise. There is already a talent gap. And then to top it, the cloud cybersecurity is still, we have a shortage. So we'll talk a little bit of that and see how we can solve those, right? I mean, it is not just, okay, we have a problem and we appreciate it. It's also going into the problem solving mode. The second thing is, we'll talk about the process, but in that process, we'll also talk about technology. So what that means is the couple of things that are often missed is the cryptographic keys and the exposure of that in the cloud, and then the multi-cloud networks and the misconfiguration that we have seen, the misconfigurations of how we try to apply the on-prem onto the cloud as is, and then it's more susceptible to misconfiguration. So let's go into the talent shortage. All right, so we have huge demand in such insufficient supply. When we call talent shortage, is always supply and demand. Certified cloud professionals, we don't have that. And then there is always a D&I angle. We need to encourage, the diverse candidates, a diverse pool as well, so that we all can, benefit from that. So those are a couple of conundrums from the cyber cloud security talent shortage perspective. It's incredibly difficult and expensive to hire a good cloud security talent. And what happens is that there are a selected few in the organization, and some of you practitioners know this, as well as the vendors, that there are a few selected people who are cloud experts, if you will. They tend to get a little bit overwhelmed because of that. So how to develop? So what we have to follow. So this is the conundrum, guys. Cyber talent gap, cloud cyber talent gap is, is basically to top it, right? So how should we do it? So the first one, and that I will recommend is that we should definitely upskill our current employees. So our current employees are our assets. Investing in them is something that is super critical. So that is strategy one. The second strategy that we are thinking about, that I'm proposing over here, is that as we are looking at more and more attack sophistication using the LLMs, the generative AIs and all that, using AI and ML to detect the suspicious online behavior. So why is it part of the talent gap? Because, if we automate these kinds of things, team, what will happen is that and the overwork of our organization will be lessened. So the impact will be minimized. And then, we have to also think about rotating high stress jobs, creating diversity, and time off is a truly time off. I try to make it a point in TIA that if don't respond, beyond the, if you're really on vacation. So in this case, there are actual strategy is make sure that you are upscaling and investing in your people, your colleagues, your employees, and then putting AI and ML so that we reduce the fatigue, the alert fatigue that comes out of that. Okay, so it's easy to say, okay, develop your people. What does that mean, actually? So, we have to prioritize the cloud certification, and experience in the tech universe, tech over a university degree, and, maybe consider paying for your existing employees and consider working with a learning and development specialist. So all these kind of strategies are there to develop your cloud cyber talent. So I think it's very important for us guys to really invest in our cyber people and fraud management people, and requesting them to go through some certifications of cloud security that is available. So that will be a very good thing to actually up-level our community, cyber community. So that is the first conundrum. We talked about cyber talent, more so about the cloud cyber talent and how to overcome that by upskilling your people, and then also, throwing in AI and ML to, take care of some mundane task. The second conundrum, now this is more like a process and a technology problem, right? So we talked about the people problem. On the process and technology side, one of the most common things that gets overlooked is cryptographic keys. Now, there are, OWASP, like I said, has come up with top 10 for cloud. There are lots of good work done by NIST and other kind of guys. So, I'm not going there. So, you guys are very well conversant with all these things. But something that in all this noise, sometimes what happens is that some of the basics get missed. And this is one of the things is having both process and technology controls for cryptographic keys in the cloud. Now, there are threats to the cloud that many of you know, like, when cloud providers hold the encryption key, there could be more cyber attacks. And these are, pretty common that But what can we do? The actions to consider for this second conundrum is storing the keys on separate key management server that are separate from the digital data. And that is most often overlooked. And make sure that your keys are not inside the source code. We have read so many news, and I don't want to name any companies over here, but there was this Marriott hotel attack that we saw, 500 million customers, and these are public news again. And there are a lot more examples that you'll see on the internet where there are keys, the cryptographic key exposure, and because the keys were just inside the source code. So that's where the process comes in the sense that do we have a proper DevSecOps where you are doing the secrets detection in the DevSecOps, whether you are trying to have as a part of your CI And if you're lucky, you have a CD pipeline as well. So on the CI, are you doing shift left and making sure that you have proper, secrets management, secrets detection checks before you go and you push your code to live? So looking for that will be something which will be super critical in addition to doing other things. You obviously have the software security tools like SAS, DAST, IST, the SBOM, the whole 9 yards that you take care of in the DevSecOps. But having a spatial treatment, making sure that the secrets detection, secrets management is taken care of as a part of the process and as a technology control will be super critical on the left-hand side. And you may also want to do that on the right-hand side to find out if there are any skews because of that. The third conundrum, so we talked about the two conundrums. Right now, one is the cyber talent, and cloud cyber talent. The second one that we talked about is the process and how do we ensure that the source code is secure and the keys, which is the secrets, if you will, that particular thing will be super critical. Now, third conundrum, and this is especially, it become very prominent when you are talking of multi-cloud frameworks and the misconfigurations that occur because of that. And again, there are tons of organizations that go and follow the multi-cloud strategy to prevent vendor lock-in. And then 78%, there are 82% of the organizations do that actually. 82%, which is a big number, as you can imagine. And 78% use more than 3 cloud services. So that is like 4/5 of the organizations. Just imagine how massive that number is. So what happens is that as cyber practitioners, when you are thinking about it, about the multi-cloud, there are, you are experts, you have some expertise in a cloud vendor one, and then cloud vendor two, you're trying to extrapolate, and the controls, the permissions might not be the same over there. And, the security is as good as the weakest link. And, that misconfigurations, guys, can be super costly. So that is a conundrum with complexity of the multi-cloud and the misconfigurations that can happen. So how to overcome that? Right. So let's talk about it. So using the consistent processes, again, we are talking about both process and technology control. So how can we have a consistent process for managing cybersecurity in multi-cloud networks? Do we have complete visibility? And when I say complete visibility, that is more like, you can follow the NIST cybersecurity framework. There is a new one that has come up with governance right now, but identify, protect, detect, recover, response, and then govern is the new one that has been discussed, as many of you know, as the CSF 2.0. But how can we go ahead and make sure that we have visibility across all these multi-cloud applications, data, devices, the users, the network configurations that we are talking about? So again, when you are talking of zero trust, there are 5 pillars, as you know. There is networks, there is devices, there is application, there is data, and there is users. So having this visibility across all the multi-cloud environments that you have and their configurations thereof. Like, for example, you are having an elastic load balancer, or if you are having some S3 buckets, are those configured properly? The data, the devices that you have over there, be it metal, be it containers, be it hypervisors, do we have those? The users, you may talk about, do privileged users have MFA, and do you have visibility over there? All the privileged users have MFA. So let's say you are using cloud vendor one, a particular privileged user has certain sets of permissions. Do you know that the same user on cloud vendor 2 have the equal number of permissions and same level of authentication? So both auth and auth are taken care of. And then another thing is the private and public APIs, the exposure can be very devastating because certain things that you are able to do it, okay, so I've been told by Nick that there is 5 minutes. I'll quickly wrap up, but closely monitor public and private APIs to minimize any access. So anyway, so there are these conundrums, and how do we solve that? Make sure that, like I said, have that complete visibility. And lastly, guys, you can read this slide, but make sure that you are thorough. So following the NIST cybersecurity framework, following the zero trust framework, make sure that you are thorough across multiple multi-cloud environments so that we have consistency both on the left-hand side as well as the right-hand side. And now there is, IACs and other kind of things that you can, those are technology details that many of you are familiar with, but ensuring this and addressing this conundrum will be, very important. And cloud misconfigurations that we talked about, having both left-hand side and right-hand side, ensuring that, whatever intention. So let's say there is load balancer configurations, your S3 bucket configurations, certain workload configuration, your OpenShift, Kubernetes, you name your technology, any of these kinds of configurations on the left-hand side, they match on the right-hand side, because that can become very dangerous. So these are some of the remedies. One of the things that is working, actually, that has worked for me in previous life as well as over here, is secure by design and by default, right? So I call it 5 SDs: secure by design, by default, by deployment, by delivery, and by okay, so I forgot one SD, but we had also by default. So these are the 5 SDs that we talk about. Leveraging these remedies and putting them when you are thinking about the multi-cloud is extremely important to make sure that we are not in the news. And automation is the key over here. So as we are thinking about cloud, you can imagine 4/5 of the organizations on the planet, 4 out of 5 organizations on the planet are moving to cloud, which is great. This is fantastic technology. We just need to be very careful as to how we do it. And that means that an entire community, which includes you, which includes me, all of us who are on the call, how can we collaborate and create cyber more as a community sport, and sharing this cloud cybersecurity processes, tools, technologies, best practices. And I know there is lots of great work being done by multiple ISAC communities, great work done by CISA, so how can we go ahead and strengthen each other out and enable each other by creating this mindset of cybersecurity as a community sport? So that is what I will summarize very quickly over here. Number one, there are 3 conundrums for cloud that we talked about. The first is that cyber talent gap, more so with the cloud. So how do we train our existing people so that the entire community benefits because of that? Number 2, how do we bake security, embed security into the process as well as into the technology? And a couple of watch out items over there. One of them is the secrets detection. The cryptographic keys should not be in the source code. And of course, that is just one of them. And then last, there is the whole OWASP that we talked about. And then be very careful as to when you're talking of the multi-cloud, make sure that you have all the cloud have consistent configurations and consistent visibility across the network. And lastly, the most important thing is, how can we work together as one integrated cyber community? Because cyber is a community sport. So with that, I really thank you guys for listening. And Nick, I think I'm on time, buddy.
Yeah, you did great. Perfectly. Timed it perfectly, Upendra. Yeah, we have some questions from the audience. Here's one. How are you navigating staffing issues in this super competitive talent and salary environment?
Yeah. No, that is a good question. I mean, there are multi-pronged, approaches, right? The first thing is, um, what we do is we are upskilling our people. Like, we invest in our people, we believe in our people are the greatest asset. I'm very fortunate and very blessed that I have a great team within TIA, and we help each other out. The way we are handling is, we get recommendations from our internal people, as well as, any of those who reach out to us. So that is how we are handling it. TI is a very good, very reputable brand. So it's very easy for us to attract talent that way, Nick. So I'm very fortunate to be working for TIA with great mission. So to answer your question, first is we are upskilling our people. Continuous learning is something that we try to do. And then, we have a great team, very smart team, and they continuously learn. And then the second one is it's all about referrals. So that is how we try to bring in talent and attract talent to such a great brand.
Great. Here's another question. What are your thoughts on outsourcing all aspects of cloud security?
Yeah, I mean, it depends is the answer, and maybe the question, the person who is asking that question might not like that answer, but it depends on what type of business you are in. If you are a startup and you don't have the manpower and all that to hire, then it's a good strategy. But if you are an established player, you have some people in your organization, with a very mature organization, then a part of it might be outsourced, but you may want to consider upskilling your people than outsourcing everything. So my answer, Nick, is it depends on the situation, but it's better to evaluate yourself to see what is the biggest bang for the buck. So there is a cost angle to it, there is also an accountability angle to it, and there is a visibility angle to it. So are you getting all the visibility by outsourcing to make sure that all the controls are in place?
Great. And here's another one. How do you identify the appropriate cloud technology talent in your separate departments or organizations? Once identified, how do you get them upscaled appropriately?
Yeah. So, the way I approach talent is very different, right? I look at the person should be extremely hungry to learn new technology. So I look for passion, number one. Number two is zero ego. If the person is not gel, they call it like, reckless nerds, right? So that is not what we are looking for. People who are absolutely humble enough to learn new technologies, work in the team, because ultimately cyber is a team sport, cyber is a community sport. And when you are talking of a team sport and community sport, is not an individual play. So now you have seen, Nick, out of these, I have not even talked about cyber, right? All I have done is just the attitude as to how you are talking about, and how you are approaching the problem. So to identify this, the people who are passionate about this, they will come, they will raise their hands. The way we are talking about cyber, handling cyber, is that there is something called security champions program, right? So they can still be working for some other organization, but they can be representing cyber liaison and being a strong advocate within that organization that is not part of the cyber. And this is just a team sports, it's a community sport. So we all play together because the enemy is outside, not within the organization.
Great. And I think we can squeeze in one more question. Patching of web services rather is a continued focus and pain point. Where do you think organizations should start when looking at this significant and ongoing problem?
Yeah, I mean, see, the patching is definitely a problem. I think that has to start on the left-hand side, ideally, right? And what that means is that, and this is an ongoing organizational problem where you don't have a production-like system outside of production. But trying to get as close to the production will be will be an ideal solution. The second problem is the blue-green deployment. So the second way to address the problem, sorry, let me summarize. The first way to address that problem is having a production-like environment, ideally, so that you can patch it in the production-like environment, test it out, and then move it to production. This might not be practical to the organizations, and I know most of the organizations are struggling with it. The second approach will be blue-green deployments, where you move certain workloads out of rotation, patch them, test them, have the A/B traffic over there, and then rotate it and then do the patches. So this kind of thing has worked in a practical sense. My preference is to do the auto patching, but again, there is the person who is asking the question, this is absolutely a very significant and ongoing problem. Blue-green deployment might be a way to work around it practically.
Great. And thanks again, Upendra, for such an incredible keynote. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. We would also like to thank today's sponsors, Hox Hunt and ForgeRock, for their participation in today's event. This officially concludes the Argyle CISO Leadership Forum. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content. Have a great rest of your day.